But for some criminals, the thrill is not in the act itself, but in honing their skills and outsmarting the police altogether.
Learn from people who have already been caught, and you see what mistakes they made and try not to make them yourself. You've got to be aware of, you know, what the police are doing and what they're coming up with in order to combat you. And you've always got to try and be ahead of them. You've always got to try and outwit them.
So how do detectives take down the ones who think they're untouchable? Londoner Danny Speed was the master tactician behind one of the most highly organised teams of criminals the flying squad had ever encountered.
His planning and preparation for an armed robbery was way beyond what we'd seen before.
Between 2007 and 2010, Speed orchestrated a series of violent raids across East Anglia in the southeast, netting nearly £500,000. He was so adept at planning and executing these raids, detectives dubbed him Mr Meticulous.
They were strategically aware criminals who planned an armed robbery, almost like perhaps the police would plan a policing operation. So that's what's making it difficult. You're almost going up against someone who's using very similar tactics to you.
For many in the criminal underworld, Speed was the man to turn to for advice.
He became almost a consultant for armed robbers and a consultant for armed robbery.
In January 2008, Speed planned his most brazen raid yet. The gang hit a nationwide building society in the quaint market town of Holt in Norfolk.
Quick, come on, hurry up! Come on, hurry up! Get enough time!
But this time, after stealing £80,000, instead of making their getaway, they had the nerve to check into the hotel down the road, where they could sit back and admire their work.
I'll have a beer, please, mate. Make that two, please, mate.
By now, I think he was enjoying rubbing the police's nose in it. He saw himself as being so well-schooled and so clever that he was almost daring himself on the next offence he committed.
And for their next offence, the gang stole £47,000 while dressed in camouflage gear to blend in with American servicemen in Mildenhall, Suffolk, home to a US military airbase.
They're thinking, if we're seen by anyone, they just think we're visiting forces. You've got to have some front to do that.
Although forensics had identified the gang behind the raids, there was insufficient evidence to convict them. So the elite flying squad were called in to take them down once and for all.
We'd look at what sort of methods they use, linking all the offences. You want to find out where they live, what vehicles they're using, who their associations are. So you'd use covert tactics around that.
But it wasn't just Speed's ability to plan a job that set him apart. He and his team had the ability to outsmart even the most sophisticated police tactics.
From the start, it was a complete nightmare. I never encountered anti-surveillance techniques by any team that we targeted before.
They knew the police tactics. They knew what we'd do. They knew what a surveillance team looked like. We had trained officers from the surveillance wing who were excellent at what they do, and they were getting compromised. He enjoyed dragging them around.
And even knowing that they were under observation, it didn't stop the gang from committing more robberies. But detectives were about to get a break. Surveillance teams had managed to identify their next target. This time, the flying squad would be lying in wait for them.
If you don't take your chance with them, then you might never get an opportunity again, and then they go up to another echelon of criminality and they become exceptionally difficult for any one police organisation to take on.
Suspects out of vehicle.
All units stand by.
Suddenly we get this horrible moment.
What's your problem? What are you up to?
Compromise,
Hey, what do you want?
compromise.
Realizing he was being watched, Danny Speed had once again outsmarted the police operation. The flying squad had missed their chance.
To get that close, to then lose it, was devastating.
After such a close shave, the gang went to ground, and Speed left the country. But he still couldn't resist bragging to the authorities.
Hey, your mates are on to me.
Excuse me?
Tell them to stop it, will ya? They're rubbish at it.
Thanks, sir.
But it wasn't long before the gang were up and running again.
They obviously need money because they're out robbing again. It's great news because we're back in.
But so far, all covert operations had failed. The flying squad were forced to rethink their tactics.
We thought we'd have to go maybe one step further and think outside the box and think of what else we could do.
So they decided to put a listening probe in Danny Speed's car.
What's up?
Listen, I've got some job coming up in the next couple of weeks if you're interested.
And immediately they got the breakthrough they needed.
It's quite amazing that a guy of his calibre would just drop his guard.
Now the flying squad were one step ahead. After an 18-month investigation, detectives were finally ready to take down Speed and his gang. But for once, Mr Meticulous was running late.
Speed had actually overslept, which is so ironic. His guard's down then at that point because he's not looking. He's just in his car and he's going like a bat out of hell to get there.
Positive ID on Speed.
All units stand by.
Suspects are changing into blacks.
All right, call in. All units, strike.
Tell me I ain't right here.
Danny Speed, the man who thought he was untouchable, had finally met his match. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison.
Weighing up the risk of, say, imprisonment or being captured is something that I think doesn't enter the mind of 90% of criminals. If you actually sat down and thought about what you were doing and what the result could be, and let's face it, you're looking at, in my case, you're looking at 20 years for armed robbery, you wouldn't go out and do it. Nowadays you can't. You're putting your life on the line and you're putting your liberty on the line for absolute, what is a petty amount of cash, and you're looking at bundles of years in jail.